Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 25 of Women's Wrestling Focus, brought to you by SEScoops and hosted by me, Ella J of a Wrestling Gal podcast. And today is a little bit of a different kind of episode in honor of Women's History Month and the recent International Women's Day that just happened this past Tuesday on March 8th. And if you haven't already checked out my interview with AEW's Anna Jay that was just posted a couple days ago, that was super fun in honor of Women's History Month. So again, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to SEScoops YouTube channel so you can be first informed on all the exclusive content over here. But as for today's episode, we're going to take a little bit into a more personal side of Women's Wrestling Focus and talk about three of my personal inspirations from within the women's wrestling world. So, without further ado, let's get on with the video. So for me personally, it was really hard to come up with only three women in wrestling that really inspire me because truthfully, there is a lot. But first and foremost, we'll get the obvious one out of the way here. For anybody who follows me on social media or knows me or knows anything about me, knows that definitely one of my biggest, if not my biggest inspiration or hero in women's wrestling is now the former Impact Knockouts champion, Mickie James. Again, she is a 6-time WWE Women's Champion and a 4-time Knockouts champion. So she's got a little bit of accolades under her belt. Definitely one of the best in the game, a true trailblazer in women's wrestling, especially during the WWE era, and now really just an overall legend in and outside of women's wrestling. And so for me, it's definitely both personally and professionally that Mickie James has really crossed over into my life and really inspired me. And so starting out, honestly, Mickie James was really my first introduction to women's wrestling way back in 2009 when I was in middle school, and that whole Piggy James storyline, however it was done, is up for debate, and I will digress upon that. But for me, it was really the message behind it that really initially captivated me about her, because during that time, we're getting a little bit into some deep things here, so here you go, internet. Definitely during that time for me, especially when I was, 12 years old, when she was showing like these body insecurities, and the storyline with Lay Cool tied in with Maria had a lot of like body image on showcase in the public eye on Friday Night SmackDown in late 2009. And so for her as the babyface kind of being bullied for it on screen was definitely something I could resonate with, because definitely body insecurities and body shaming has been something that I have dealt with personally my whole life and never really been comfortable with. So to see somebody like her really go against the grain and have a real life issue tied into professional wrestling was really something I had never been used to. Granted, I had only discovered wrestling a few months earlier, but right away I was drawn in because I feel like I empathized with her, and in the end, she kind of did get her comeuppance, or triumph as you would call it, at the Royal Rumble in 2010 when she won the Women's Championship, and I guess in a way, she did defeat the bullies, but for me, I definitely empathized with her and could relate to that so much. So definitely on screen, to me, being drawn into women's wrestling, that is a memory I forever cherish. Granted, was a storyline done tastefully in my opinion? No, but back then definitely body image was something, especially as you're growing up as a young woman just in life, is definitely something I feel like a lot of people struggle with, and even still to this day I definitely do. But for me, that initial on-screen presence of her, I was more drawn in by the emotion that she evoked out of me, and I could relate to her, and I empathized with her, and I was rooting for her, and in the end, I guess she did beat the bullies at the Royal Rumble. Granted, she lost a championship a few weeks later, but definitely that whole storyline initially is what drew me in. But definitely to going behind the curtain as I grew up and grew older and wiser, and then understood what kayfabe was, definitely stuff that she dealt with in her childhood that she has talked about on like Lillian Garcia's Chasing Glory podcast, and even with Vince Russo, I believe I already loved her in-ring work. I first appreciated the emotion she evoked out of me, and of course then came to love and enjoy her in-ring work in WWE and then TNA at the time. But going behind the curtain and already having a deep appreciation for her professionally and personally as well, definitely watching and listening to some of the real life stuff that she grew up with and now utilizes to make a difference in her life. And for anybody who hasn't listened to that, I highly suggest checking out her interview with Vince Russo and Lillian Garcia. She explains her whole storyline, and especially her growing up and overcoming abuse and body insecurities and depression and all of that. She tells her story much better than I ever could. I definitely highly suggest checking it out because it really is a powerful story, and being able to come out of such a tough situation that I can't even imagine, and then somehow finding the courage to speak up and say something and make a difference and continue to pursue her dream is just very, very powerful in my mind, because I don't know of a lot of people who can come out of such a dark place in their life and be able to make an impact and even have the courage to pursue their dream. Because shortly after, she was then becoming Alexis Lurie, starting up in wrestling in the late 90s, which is crazy when I was just born, and made a difference in pro wrestling now. And she's utilizing her background and her story to be able to motivate and inspire others with child help and making a difference to kids who maybe don't have a voice, or kids who have dealt with child abuse and all of that she has grown up and struggled with. And she's now utilizing her voice and her story on bigger platforms to be able to inspire and help fund this organization. And it's really cool to see her, it's really cool to see her story unfold and have her tell it, and now utilize the dark times to now inspire others and tell her story, because it really is so powerful. And I mean, not only is she great in the ring, but she also has a really powerful story that I could relate with a lot. And so Mickie James is definitely my biggest inspiration in professional wrestling, I would say. Definitely appreciate her in-ring work, all of her accomplishments. She has been nothing but wonderful to me. She's hanging right up here in my room for a reason. There's a lot more, but definitely her personally, hearing her story for that, and then seeing her be an advocate for women's wrestling, especially in this last 9 months now after being released from WWE, then going into NWA, and even leaving WWE with this whole vision. And there was this quote, like, you may be heartbroken, but it fixes your vision, or something to that magnitude. She didn't lose her vision, even being released to WWE, of having this idea for an all-women's show or an all-women's brand or something. It's something that she had taken even before she left WWE and kept it close to her heart and was super passionate about it. That's something about her that, like, not a lot of people have, is that passion and that drive for something. And if they really want to do it, they will do it. They have the courage, the willpower, and of course the resources helped too as well. But for her to not let a release like that obstruct her vision, and really turn that release into a prosperous and really empowering event, culminating at NWA's first ever all-women's pay-per-view, is really so powerful. She's been huge for women in professional wrestling. I mean, putting over younger talent. She can still go, but she's definitely has a vision for the future, and she truly wants to make a difference from how I perceive things. So we could go on, but definitely Mickie James for me has all my praises. She is definitely a legend in and outside of the ring. So much respect to her, and so incredibly grateful for her. And she's definitely one woman who I think deserves a lot of recognition, especially during Women's History Month, but truthfully, all the time. She's an all-around badass, all-around hardcore country legend. So she definitely deserves a lot of flowers, and it's an incredible journey she's had her whole career, but especially these last 9 months, taking something so heartbreaking like a release and turning it into a positive and letting it fuel her comeback, and to now go under history as now a 4-time Knockouts World Champion. She's had amazing, captivating storylines, and she still continues to propel forward, and she's just getting started. So definitely one woman who inspires me a lot. But moving on, we could go on and on about Mickie James. For me, also another one is definitely, I didn't plan this, but ironically, it's the person right next to her in this photo that's hanging behind me, Alexa Bliss. And again, Alexa Bliss is also another person with a really, really powerful story outside of the ring that I know she has shared on WWE, and also I think actually Lillian Garcia's podcast as well. Chasing Glory is where I first heard it, I believe. And so again, Alexa was also one. Again, she tells it much better than I would be able to, but essentially she grew up, especially during her teenage years, struggling with an eating disorder and really a lot of body insecurities and issues and stuff like that. But now she's been able to turn that and conquer that and overcome that when I don't think a lot of people have. And so she's been able to turn that dark time into her life into an empowering story. And now there's this clip of her talking to a little girl during a press conference or Q&A with fans, and just how she interacted with that little girl, I think is just so pure and so wholesome. And she has now been able to inspire a lot of other people who are struggling with the same thing or similar things to that. And so I think it's cool that she has this platform to be able to share her story. And of course, she's definitely one of the most prominent women in WWE today. She has become a multi-time champion in the last few years, and her character evolution I think is really, really cool, especially coming in as this kind of Tinkerbell inspired character with the glitter and all of this. She has now become like one of the most like high quality heels in pro wrestling, and especially when that's something that she has stated that like she struggled with and didn't have the confidence to maybe think that she could pull off, going from a babyface to a heel. She now really embraces and embodies that, and so it's definitely really cool to see her evolution going in. Her character evolution on screen too, I think, has been really, really cool and really inspiring with the versatility that she has in her character work, and also bringing in a little bit of herself in that attitude. And there was definitely one time too on WWE on one of the late night Fox shows where she cut this like minute promo and essentially saying that her looks may have gotten her in the door, but it was her ability and talent that knocked the damn door down. And so that for me was really, really cool too. She definitely has a lot of naysayers, a lot of people in the wrestling business do, but she does not let that define her. She doesn't let that stop her, and she's been proving people wrong since she stepped into the WWE, and especially considering she's one of the most high-profile women's wrestlers today, it's definitely really inspiring to see her be able to still have that confidence within herself and not let it get her down. At least we don't see it from an outside perspective. So she's definitely one too who has such, again, a powerful story outside of professional wrestling that really, really hit home with me personally. And before I move on to my last one for today's video, also let me know down below, who are some women in professional wrestling who inspire you? Whether it's a professional wrestler, whether it's a ring announcer, a content creator, anybody in wrestling. Tell me down below in the comments, who are some women in wrestling that particularly inspire you? Again, there are so many women today that inspire me so much in ways they don't even know, but for the sake of this video, I will be ending it with a 21-year veteran in the wrestling game, an AEW superstar, a former NXT superstar. I'm talking about the legendary Mercedes Martinez. And for me, it's funny because I was not really one who maybe was aware of Mercedes Martinez per se prior to the Mae Young Classic, but she quickly became one of my favorites, and definitely hearing her story of her fight, of her clawing and scratching her way to the big time, to WWE, because at that point it was 2017. It would have been 17-year veteran then. At that point, it took her a long time to get to the big leagues, as they say, but she never let that squander her. And so her having all that drive throughout her career and continuing forward through all of the stuff that she went through, especially her coming up in the early 2000s when there wasn't a lot of women in professional wrestling, and hearing her talk about that is just so crazy. Some of the things that she had to endure at that time when women weren't taken as seriously as they are now. And so she still didn't let it stop her from achieving and pursuing her dreams and moving forward. And so her tenacity, her drive, her courage, especially too, and who she is and how she identifies, has been really, really cool. So Mercedes Martinez, I have a lot of respect for in the ring, but also she really is a badass. Honestly, she is the Latina sensation for a reason. She is so sensational in her in-ring work, and her presence is just, honestly, and she just has a wealth of knowledge too, and her being open-minded to putting newer talent over and working with them is just really cool too. I can't say enough positive things about her. She inspires me so much, and she's definitely in my Mount Rushmore of women's wrestling as well. Same with Mickie James. And really, those are just 3 women off the top of my head who really, really inspire me. But like I said, there's definitely a lot of women in wrestling who particularly inspire me. But for the sake of this video and time, we will keep it at 3. But again, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to SEScoops so you can be first informed on all the exclusive content and videos and interviews we have coming up. WrestleMania is right around the corner, so we'll definitely be dropping some cool stuff in the next couple weeks. But again, also, let me know down in the comments below, in honor of Women's History Month, who are some women in wrestling that really inspire you or empower you. Like I said, there's so many women that I could list off the top of my head, but definitely Mickie James, Alexa Bliss, and Mercedes Martinez are definitely 3 women who inspire me through their work in the ring and, of course, outside of it, both personally and professionally. And so, in honor of Women's History Month, this is Ella J signing off on episode 25 of Women's Wrestling Focus.